Ladies and gents, it's been a few days. I've been in Monaco for my birthday for the Grand Prix. But now, after the batteries have been recharged, the transfer links are left, right and centre. Romero, links to Manchester United. A credible source from Argentina has been shut down. And it's now, who do you believe? Do you believe this person or do you believe that person? We're going to talk about it. Savinho, very, very close to joining Spurs, as well as Van Hecke. It feels like right now, Tottenham are trying to get ahead of the January transfer window, of the summer transfer window. We've already got Robertson and Senesi, both, here we goes, both will be in a Spurs shirt next season. Robertson has addressed the Spurs fan base as well from America in his Scottish national jersey. And it feels like we are on the right path. You know, I've got mixed feelings about Savinho, but I am somewhat excited about the upcoming transfer window. I feel that we still need a striker. I still feel we need a central midfielder. But if you would have said to me at the start of the window or at start of the end of the season, by the start of the window, you could have Van Hecke, Savinho, Robertson and Senesi, I would have bitten your hand off. You know, I am not too sad that Romero is leaving. I feel he has been a very, very good servant for this football club, captained us to a European trophy in that final. But I do feel at times he's extremely rash. I do feel at times he lets us down. He runs 20, 30 yards out of his defensive line and just ruins things at times. But make sure you go down and drop a like on the video if you haven't already. We are very, very close now to 24,000 subscribers, and 88% of all of you who watch the content daily have not gone down to that subscribe button. This video is brought to you by Oxford Natural. Make sure you scan the QR code or click on the link in the description to get up to 70% off. Today's video is brought to you by Oxford Natural, optimum day and night. Now, I'm not here to sit there and tell you that I've been on this for months, and this definitely isn't some magic fix. But the results simply speak for themselves. What I will tell you is, a lot of people are using this and the results are pretty hard to ignore. Optimum Day helps with energy, cravings, and keeping on track day to day. While Optimum Night is more about recovery, sleep, and letting your body reset. It's simple, nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary, but people are getting results. When you start hearing names like Michael Owen, England legend, Ballon d'Or winner, £35 down, immediately you want to know. Or you hear Robbie from AFTV or DR Sports, £80 down. That's a lot of weight. Or you hear Anita, immigration lawyer, £40 down. Or Linda, a business executive, nearly £50 down. And I've been hearing about this more and more, especially from people that are trying to keep themselves on track. So if you're sitting there thinking, I need to sort this out, maybe this is worth a look, this could be for you. Scan the QR code, click the link in the description, use code HTT70 where you could get up to 70% off. No big promises from me, I'm just putting this in front of you. Thank you very much for Oxford Natural for sponsoring this video. Make sure you get down, scan the QR code or the link in the description. Get over to Oxford Natural as well. Some really, really good products, I must say. And thank you very much for sponsoring this video. Now, huge transfer stories. This came out last night and it has been shut down a couple of times. But I do want to speak on it because he might not be joining Man United, but I do think he is going to leave very, very soon. Man United wants to buy, Cuti Romero from Tottenham and is preparing an offer. Now, that's coming out from Gaston, Gaston Idol, I think his name is. That's how it's pronounced. Very credible Argentine source. Remember, this guy did do an interview at our training ground for Romero. And it feels like it might not be Man United, but I do think he will be leaving Spurs at some point. And I think next season with Van Hecke, Senesi, Van de Ven if he stays, and of course, Dragusin, I think likelihood he's probably going to leave, and Kevin Danso for one game a week. I do feel we have a decent set of centre-backs that can compete. We're not in European football. We're not in the Champions League, Europa League or Conference League. So, that one game a week, the only really tough period we're going to have when it comes to games coming thick and fast is the festive period around Christmas. But other than that, I do think we will be more than adequate next season. Now, another report that's come out as well in the last 24 hours coming out from Ben Jacobs. Tottenham intend to place a third bid for Brighton defender Jan-Paul van Hecke, who wants to move to Spurs. Multiple sources in Holland say that personal terms have been agreed. There remains optimism and agreement can be reached, and that is coming out from a very credible source, Ben Jacobs. Now, he does only have 1 year left on his contract, and I know some people are already out there. There's a few clips going around of when they gave the ball away against us. And Xavi Simons, I believe it was, scored in the 2-2 draw with Brighton, which was, I think, the 5th or 6th last game towards the last season. How many times have our defenders made mistakes, and we still support them? I do think he is going to be a good addition. You know, Senesi was Bournemouth's player of the season last year, Bournemouth's best centre-back. Van Hecke has been very, very good for Brighton last year. Van de Ven, of course, we know his qualities, and Danso. That's 4 decent centre-backs. I do feel Danso is a little bit underrated and doesn't get enough credit. And if you can get a decent-ish fee for Christian Romero, I don't feel that it's bad business by any stretch. And then Romano has kind of quote tweeted one of his tweets yesterday regarding Savinho. He did put out on the 2nd of June, negotiations ongoing for Savinho to Tottenham as revealed 2 weeks ago and progressing well. And then he put out the eyes emoji. He normally does this when it's quite close. So I will expect probably a here we go. I may be putting out a second video for a here we go today for Savinho. I do have mixed feelings on him. I am willing to give him, a chance, and I will support him in a Spurs shirt. I do have slight concerns when it comes to his output. And listen, his first season at Man City, when he got 10 plus assists, he was good. But there is also a difference from setting up Erling Haaland to setting up, Solanke. Kyler Moani looks like he's going to be joining Juventus. We haven't got to watch him ever again in a Spurs shirt. And Richarlison. We do need to improve that striker position. That, for me, has to be the priority going forward for us. We have to go out there and sign a striker. Now, Sam C, who's very credible when it comes to Man United news, used to work for the United stand, now works for the Athletic, has come out and said Man United aren't actively pursuing a centre-back at this stage of the transfer market amid rumours for a bid for Christian Romero. Now, listen, I can see him at someone like an Inter Milan or at Atletico Madrid. I don't really want to send him to Man United, one of our teams that I wouldn't say they're one of our rivals because they're in the Champions League and we're not, and they're from Manchester and we're from London, but they are a Premier League rival. So I don't want to see us strengthen. I do think he would probably fit in quite well. He's got one of his Argentine teammates at centre-back as well in Martinez. But I do think a move abroad to probably Spain or Italy is a lot more likely. Now, Simon Jones from the Daily Mail has come out and said that Tottenham are advancing in a deal in talks over 60 million. I do think that's slightly excessive. I think 45 million is probably more about right. But however, Man City are one of the best selling clubs around for a reason. They are very, very good at, purchasing players at cheap prices and then selling them on for astronomically high fees, like they did with a number of players. Julian Alvarez comes to mind, bought him from River Plate, sell him to Atletico Madrid. I do think, though, 60 million is slightly excessive. There are a number of players that I've spoken about on various different channels. I think Alex Scott would be a fantastic addition to Spurs. Of course, as a Spurs fan, can play on the double pivot for Bournemouth, can play as an 8, as a box-to-box 8, and has played as a 6, can play any of those central midfield positions. Marmoush is another player who's been linked. I think Marmoush in a Spurs shirt, people might be saying, yes, it's a little bit unrealistic, but ultimately, you have to put your name in the hat. If you don't buy a ticket, you won't win the raffle. Another player that has been linked, and this one divides a lot of opinion, but I do think last season he had a very good season for West Ham. Somerville to Tottenham is off, and that is coming out. I believe that's from a Dutch source, who also said that Van Hecke has agreed personal terms with Spurs. I like Somerville. I think he got more goals last year than Savinho. Could play on the left. We are going to have a selection headache when some of these players return fit. When Kulusevski is back fit, when of course Somerville, if he potentially signs Kudus on the right, Who starts up front? Is it Richarlison or Solanke? We do need to know what our best front line is going into next season. Of course, you've got Odegaard returning from ACL as well. At some point next season, Xavi Simons returning from ACL. But it's important to note that they aren't going to be fit until January, February. So we have to make sure that we are ready to go by the start of next season. But let me know your thoughts down below. Make sure you drop a like. Make sure you go down and hit that subscribe button. I will see you next time. I am out.